I want to say welcome. I want to say welcome. Now, you know, I thought about welcome, and I thought about Eddie, and I said, you know, Brother Eddie always made everybody feel welcome. That's what I remember most about him. And so what I'm going to invite you all to do, because, you know, he had a way of making everybody think that you were special, because I thought I was the special one, I'm going to tell you. And so I felt more welcome, you know? So I want you to think about how he made you feel welcome. Because if you're here, I know he made you feel welcome. You have a story to tell. You know, that person that everybody says, you know, how you know Eddie? You know what I mean? That's a special somebody, ain't it? So I want you to think about how he made you feel welcome. And breathe that in. And let it out. And breathe it in again. And now I can say, welcome. Yay. So we're going to get right into the program. This time right now is a very sacred time. The time of your birth is a sacred time, and a time when we make our transition. It's a beautiful time. So we're here today really to celebrate the legacy of a great one who was a warrior, a builder, and a healer. Am I not right? Yes, that's right. So I'm going to call up Brother Paul Coates.
I don't know when, Mama Rashida, thank you.
Oh, thank you.
And look, I'm thanking Mama Rashida because I don't know when I've been to a celebration and you call somebody's name and people start clapping, so you must have done that. Look, this is a challenging time. This is a challenging time for most of the people in this room. Because most of the people in this room had the kind of relationship with Eddie that was a personal relationship, and they loved this man. And I know what Rashida's saying because I felt special. As a matter of fact, when you were saying that, I was thinking about myself until you mentioned it. And I'm so special with this brother that on his transition, I began writing notes of what to say today. And I spent a week writing these notes. And do you know what? The more I went over, the more grief it caused. So I gave up the notes. I really did, because this is, as Rashida says, this is about celebration. I do want to tell y'all something too. This is how I'm special. Where is Amber? Amber runs everything. Oh, there she is. Okay. Amber runs everything. Amber is Dominique's daughter. She runs everything. And when she asked me to be first, when she told me to be first, she told me, Paul, you can speak as long as you want. Okay. Everybody else is on the time thing. That means Danny is on the time thing. But the truth is, I know I can't speak as long as I want. And so I knew I had to use this time, and I intend to use this time to build on what Rashida is saying. This is about celebration. This is about celebrating Eddie's life, and that's what we're going to do today. And I hope that's what you're in this room for. Because, and not only this room, when we go over to, because there's so many people in this room, and there's so many Eddie stories, that when we go to the repast, that's not just an opportunity to sit down and eat. There's going to be microphones over there, and we're going to listen to Eddie's stories for those hours, because there are that many stories. This man has so many communities that he's a part of. And in each of those communities, he shows up, and each time he shows up as large. and he touches people, and he moves people, and he creates the space for us to have the lives that we have. I know he created the space for me to have the life that I have. That life starts in the Black Panther Party. I was a community worker. I wouldn't even be in the Black Panther Party if this man hadn't got arrested, okay? When he gets arrested, I come in. That's when my life begins as in the Panther Party. And that's how most people know me. And that's how I know myself today. Other people know me through publishing and bookstores. It's Eddie Conway. And it's the connection with Eddie Conway that actually moves me into books. So he creates the life that I have and the life that I live now. And there are other people in this room who knew him in that way, that he creates their lives, whether it is when he comes out of jail or whether it's when he's in jail. Because you know, Huey P. Newton used to have this thing. One of his early essays that was very attractive to me was, "Prison is, where is thy victory?" Prison, where is thy victory? And Eddie Conway was the embodiment of that. Because those walls, as thick as those walls were, Eddie used to reach around the world. He used to reach through those walls, and he would draw people from around the world, and they would come to him. Dominique first heard about Eddie in South Africa. She's on a trip in South Africa, and they know about Eddie Conway. And they sent her back with that energy. And it's that energy that carries him all through his incarceration, that period of his incarceration. It's that energy that carries him into this other realm where he now resides. I want to thank everybody, first of all, that's here. Because not only did Eddie have special relationships with you, you created Eddie Conway too. Like I say, he created me, he created you, you created him also. Each one of you, as he touched you and you touched him back, and y'all listened to him, and sometimes those are some crazy things y'all were listening to, because Eddie could be out there. But the beautiful thing about being out there is you could shake your head and then it would happen. You know, what he was talking about would happen. But you created him in the sense that you saw him as this warrior, and that's who he lived to be. That's how he lived his life as you saw him. You saw him in a way that he helped people, and he helped people. I was thinking about when Eddie came out of jail, I tried to tell him, I gave him good advice. I gave him good advice, because I give good advice, okay? I said, Eddie, you have to take a break. You have to take at least 2 weeks off or 2 months. I can't remember what I told him, Dominique, but I told him he got to take a break because, you know, he'd been in jail for 44 years. Now you come out, you can't keep going at that same pace. You got to figure out what the world has for you, what you're going to do in the world. And Eddie said, yeah, I agree. I don't know if it was the first day or the second day up in that house that he had people up there he was organizing. Because you know he organized everything, right? He would organize everything. Here lies a good brother, a very, very good brother who is dear. And I spoke so many times from the day that Eddie was incarcerated, probably until he got out. I don't know how many times I've spoken for him and was his words to the community. I don't know. And so I'm here doing that now, and I know that what he would agree in me saying is thank you. He would want me to thank, in his last words, he would want me to thank everyone that's in this room, and especially those that were with him all the way through. And there are people in this room that joined at different times, and there's some people in this room that were there from the beginnings. We especially thank his family for lending him to us. He would have it no other way, though. Y'all know that. He had the commitment that he was going to be always part of your family, but he was always going to grab other families from around the world, and that's what he did. He would want me to thank the lawyers. He would want me to thank the people. Y'all know how many times we raised money for Eddie? Some people in this room do. And y'all know we would do everything from selling buttons to postcards to chicken dinners. Yeah, all of that. And more, and more. He would want me to thank all of the people that gave money to him that he often used for himself, but he also used it for other prisoners, other people who were incarcerated, other people, political prisoners who were halfway around the country. He would want them to have money, and he would send money to them. He would want me to thank y'all for supporting him and for supporting him now and keeping his memory alive. And he would want me to acknowledge, as I must, his immediate family, his family on marriage, Dominique, and he would want me to acknowledge all of his children, his sisters and brothers. But I want to get back to Dominique because I have to tell you, Eddie, this last year has really, really been rough on the family. And it's been rougher on no one other than his wife. And I have just been amazed at the strength and love of this woman for this man. I just don't know, and I'm not going to get into all the details, but look, this woman has carried on. I'm trying to figure out how to say this without getting real personal. I'm just going to leave it there. She has been with him every step of the way. Every step of the way, and I just celebrate. I've had a relationship with Dominique for the last 15 years or more, 20 years, whatever it is. But in this last year, I really gained insight, not only in how a woman really can support her husband in death, but just in terms of how a husband can support the wife. Because Eddie, every conversation we had, he was concerned about you. Every conversation, he loved you and he loved his people, he loved his family. He loved the world more and he gave his life in that way, and he'd still be working today. I don't know if I got everything or if I didn't. There's one thing I need to get. So while we were still in the viewing, Brother Omar Babur is here. He and I came up and placed this banner, this blanket, on Eddie's coffin. And it don't even sound right saying coffin, his resting place or whatever it is. But the significance of this is this banner was sent down from New York by the sister Yasmin. She maintains this. It has been on every... It is only placed on Panthers' coffins, okay? It's only placed on Panther coffins, and it has been placed on the coffins of a number of different Panthers, and now it has its place on Eddie's coffin. When this service is over, it will be handed over and hand transported back to New York. I think that's significant. To say, and that's the last thing I want to include on this. And again, I thank you for listening. I thank you for listening to me. And I thank you for being here for Eddie, because Eddie was always there for us. Always. Thank you.
Brother Mansa Musa. My brother and friend, come on now. The people. All power to the people. All power to the people.
The good thing about the English language is you got past tense and you got present tense. So I'm not going to talk about Eddie in the past tense because Eddie has not left me yet, and Eddie will never leave me. And what a lot of y'all don't know is the way me and Eddie got together was, and I didn't know this, but Paul was the one that told Eddie about me. I had wrote Paul when I was in the county jail. They had an organization, and I had wrote him telling about my case. And he in turn told Eddie that I was coming to the penitentiary. So when I got to the penitentiary, I couldn't understand why Eddie took such an interest in me. we was in the bleachers, and he was teaching me, reading, we was doing political education out of the Red Book, dialectical materialism, contradictions, and he was educating me and raising my conscience, because Eddie knew this about me. He knew that if he could get me just to think, that I wouldn't self-destruct. And as much as he tried, oftentimes I did self-destruct. But he always was there for me. And when I think about some of the things that Paul just said about this past year, I had the privilege to be in that space. I had the privilege and the honor to be in this woman's presence and to witness what he's talking about, to be in his daughter's presence and to witness what he's talking about. And it was hard. And when Dominique would call me, say, Master, I'm there. Not because, for no other reason, but this is what Eddie would do. If you call Eddie, one thing about Eddie that you would know about Eddie was this. Eddie not going to come, but Eddie going to send the troops. When you look up, you going to say, like, Eddie, man, I'm in a jam. He going to say, okay. When you look up, somebody going to be there and say, look, Eddie told me come and get you. Eddie told me give you this. Eddie told me call this number. Eddie told me make sure you had this. Because Eddie was that kind of person. Eddie made sure that people was well taken care of. That's the kind of person he was. And when I step back and reflect on, like I said, I'm not letting Eddie go in the sense of like, oh, Eddie's gone. Because I'm going to reflect on a story that one of the stories, when Laura Woodhull had got out, and she was coming to visit Eddie in the penitentiary. And me and him was talking, we was on a tier together. He said, yeah, this comrade come and see me. I said, what's her name? He said, Laura Woodhull. I said, oh, I know her. He said, you know her? I said, yeah. So when he went down and came back, we was talking. He said, well, how would you? I said, Eddie, this is what we do. Somebody sent word down that a comrade was coming down. They was moving her around, and she was going to the Maryland prison. She was in the county jail detention center in Baltimore, and somebody sent word to me, said, look, it's a comrade in the detention center, make sure she's all right. This is the connection that Eddie and us had. This is the connection that Eddie had with all political prisoners. This is the connection that Eddie had with people. So this is and actually is a celebration. And we're not going to let Eddie go. When you think about Eddie, think what Eddie would do, then do that. When you think about Eddie, say, well, Eddie would feed somebody. The Eddie would organize people to lick stamps. Eddie would have people pass out flyers, organize people to pass out flyers. When you think about Eddie Conway, think about what Eddie would do. Like they say, well, what would Jesus do? We saying, well, what would Eddie do? What would Eddie do in this situation? See, what would Eddie do in this situation right here? Eddie would make sure that everybody felt welcome. Eddie would make sure everybody felt they had a purpose. More importantly, Eddie would make sure everybody felt love. All power to the people.
Next, we'll have a musical selection by the wonderful Navasha Dea.
All power to the people. All power to the people. My mother leads and says that in Cleveland, Ohio, where I was born. Thank you so much for the invitation to offer song. Thank you so much. It's an honor. I met Eddie Conway through Papa P, Paul Coates, who I call Papa P, my husband and I, Fanon Hill. And he came and visited our family in East Cleveland, Ohio. My father-in-law, Paul Hill, is here from Cleveland. My husband, Fanon Hill is here as well. And we just send our love to the family, from both of our sides of the family, for the work that has been done, the good work that he has done. Wole wa e gungun wole wa, wole wa e gungun wole wa, Ole wa e gungun ole wa, oh, ole wa. Ole wa e gungun ole wa. Ole wa e gungun ole wa. Ole wa e gungun ole wa, oh, ole wa. En yame marase, en yame marase, en yame marase, en yame marase. We have Lafayette Gilchrist accompany me. Lord, dear Lord of love, God Almighty, God above, please look down and see my people through. Lord, dear Lord of love, God Almighty, God above, please look down and see my people through. I believe the moon and stars shine up in the sky. And when the day is gray, it's just the dark clouds passing by. Lord, please bring us comfort in all our troubled minds. Come Sunday, oh, come Sunday, that's the day. Oh, I believe the moon and stars will shine up in the sky. And when the day is gray, it's just the dark clouds passing by. Lord, please bring us comfort in all our troubled minds. Come, oh, come Sunday, that's the day. Ooh.
My goodness. Yes. So, Woo! Okay, now. Next, we'll have Ward to speak remarks from Ward Churchill and Natsu Saito.
Thank you. It's an honor for us to be here with you today, to be in this service, to be part of this community, to be on this land. There's so much love in this room today, so much pain and joy, so many memories. I've been thinking a lot about the gifts we've gotten from Eddie and what I'll carry with me. Wherever he was, we know that he was learning, organizing, working to make the world a better place, putting his sharp intellect and incisive analyses to work for the people. Eddie was full of energy. He always had projects and plans. I know most of us were roped into them. But he was also truly grounded in himself and in this world. And so I keep coming back to the joy that he took in just being here with us and with all his relatives. His love for the birds and squirrels and dogs, the land he was on, the changing season, the movement of the clouds, his ability to spend hours on the porch watching for the hawks who always greeted him. I think that's why he could carry himself with such grace and dignity through so much pain and trauma, always contesting injustice and uplifting those who keep the light in our children's eyes. For those of us who find it easier to engage in political struggles, but hard to just be, one of the many gifts we've gotten from Eddie is this reminder that our love for the people has to be grounded in our love of life itself. They say that grief is just love with no place to go, but I'm not sure that applies here. Eddie showed us what to do with our grief. He exuded love, revolutionary love, in all he did. He showed us all the places love can go. And as we channel the love that is also grief, I think he'll always be with us. Thank you.
Oh, what to say about Eddie. Many things have been said. One of the themes that's emerged, I think, in the personal knowledge of every individual in the room, but certainly in the remarks that have been made so far, is one of kindness. Kindness. In contrast to the way he was characterized in the media, particularly in the 70s, but for decades thereafter. But I'd like to go beyond kindness. Gentleness. Gentleness. Those squirrels off the porch and going out and gathering acorns to bring up to the squirrels that he had adopted here. That is shipping acorns from Atlanta to Baltimore to feed baby squirrels so that they'd have a diet to which they were entitled. Yeah. I never knew anyone who would do that. I wouldn't have. But those days in the porch and greeting the hawk and conversations that range from the Jakarta method to where do we find the best cinnamon roll in Atlanta? And the missions to go find those rolls. We had to do a comparative taste test on every one of them, of course. The thing with Eddie is that usually when he came down to our place, it was to kick back, to regroup, recharge. And I never seen anybody in such a frenzy all the time to maintain contact, make sure he was on top of everything, give instructions, give advice, solicit advice. And I think in a way this begins to sum the man up, because lest I convey the idea that he was in some sense soft. No. Eddie's bedrock, or maybe I should call it steel, which is reflected through those years in those institutions, that prison. He had a dignity that was absolutely undeniable. Dignity born of integrity and determination. As Paul said, he came out of prison doing exactly what it was they put him in prison for. Now think about that. This package, this combination that made Eddie Conway was considered criminal in the society we inhabit. Eddie understood how it was necessary to resist. Eddie understood that it was in humanity that you resist the inhumanity. As Mansa said, he was always setting it up to the benefit of others. Always. Eddie Conway, as the saying goes, was large when he entered a room, was large when he entered the scene. I would go beyond that and say Eddie Conway was a giant. That you can say power to the people. You can say all power to the people. Eddie embodied the power of the people in its emergence. Eddie has not left us. Eddie has provided us an inspiration, a guidebook, a map, as it were, of what we must do to proceed to arrive at the self-determination which allows us to grasp the power of the people. Eddie is among the ancestors, but he is, in addition, the light that lights our future. And so I'll say it, as others have said it, all power to the people.
All right, y'all. One of my favorite artists, Brother Emory Douglas. Yes.
All power to the people. First, I would like to give my love to Dominique, the family, and I'd like to celebrate Eddie's life in the context that I knew Eddie. And I would like to start off with Paul Coates, who for many years always kept me abreast on how Eddie was doing, and then meeting Dominique, and then connecting with, going to the prison, connecting with Eddie. When Eddie gets out, Dominique and Eddie comes to the Bay Area. They stayed with me at my house. We travel around the city. We meet folks, show great love for Eddie. Much love. Common folks, everyday folks. Coming back to Baltimore, staying with Eddie and Dominique. Eddie being stubborn sometimes. And I say, Dominique gonna keep you in line. And I always let him know that in a loving way, in a kind way. And that which would happen. I recall when I went to Cuba, Eddie came and Dominique came to Cuba with a delegation, and they made sure that we connected. We traveled around, enjoyed Cuba while we were there. We met with Gloria Rolando, the well-known Afro-Cuban art filmmaker. She showed us around and traveled around. I recall when I was in Tanzania with the Panthers there, who had been in exile since 1969. Pete O'Neill and Charlotte O'Neill, his wife who could come back, they had the opportunity to connect all those years. It was amazing to see that respect and that love between the two of them in Tanzania. Eddie, as brother said, that when Eddie was telling me about the squirrels, I knew he had compassion. He had grand and great compassion for all human living people and folks. I acknowledge when we came to the 50-year anniversary of the Black Panther Party, everybody there was embracing Eddie. We're glad to see him. A lot of people didn't know that there were Polynesian Panthers who were there, who were official chapter of the Black Panther Party in 1971. They sent their love, they embraced Eddie. They were so happy to see Eddie and meet him while he was there. I want to say, but also Eddie had a garden with young people here in Philadelphia, in Baltimore, where he had invited me to come and do some talks with some young folks and do some murals at one of the schools with some young kids. All of these things are the spirit of what we should embrace and love Eddie. That's what's revolutionary. That's a revolutionary love for the people in a common, basic way. And I'm honored to have been a part of that in relationship to sharing those moments with Eddie. And the spirit of Eddie lives on. And I would like to close with this, saying we have stopped for a moment to encounter each other, to meet, to love, to share. This is a precious moment, but it is a transient. It is a little parenthesis in eternity. If we share with caring lightheartedness and love, we will create abundance and joy for each other. And then this moment will have been worthwhile. All power to the people.
Woo. All right, y'all, for real, this is my favorite poet. She is Sister Laini Mataka. Beautiful moment here. Cooperation. Thank you. Let's forget about that.
Okay. Can you hear me in the back? Guess not, huh? I learned to love Eddie through Paul. For over, 40-some years, Eddie and I may have had 2 conversations and they may have lasted 10 minutes. I learned to love him through Paul. With love, we release. As our hold on you weakens, we can feel the grasping fingers of those on the other side wanting you. Our need to keep you is almost as strong as their need to install you. We are your entourage, and we have come to sing the rhythm and blues of your life, to wrap a lion's mane around your handsome face, to drape a panther's skin over your shoulders and an ankh over your heart. For you, there will be no rest in peace, but a beauteous reign in power. For 44 years of excruciating training, that was your initiation into Garvey's whirlwind. That's why the fingers from the other side are so anxious to touch you, so anxious to embrace you and pull you into that ancestral boot camp of ethereal justice. Forgive us for our resistance, for our reluctance to let go of one of the finest examples of black manhood that many of us have ever seen. Please pardon the selfishness in us that wants you to stay and continue to give of yourself all the way down to the fine granules of your being. As our hold on you weakens, we can feel the strength in the fingers grabbing from the other side. What do you call a man who is so much a man that his integrity is wanted by those on both sides of time? What do you call a man who sacrifices his entire adult life on the altar of black liberation? What do you call a man to whom being black and being a man were indivisible? You call him Eddie Conway.
Beautiful, 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 powerful. All power to the people. Next, we'll have Sister Rhonda Stokes. Please come forward. Thank you.
All power to the people. When I first met Eddie, I didn't know how big he was. I didn't know him as a political person, if you will. In fact, he just became my friend through Dominique. So I just had like a personal relationship with him. So this, Eddie was a mentor to me though. And my personal favorite, the title that I want to give him is just friend. You see, because when I was granted the opportunity to see him up close and personal, as I stand before you all today, I can recall some of his favorite pastimes, which was listening to good music, reading a good sci-fi book, putting together puzzles, sharing a good glass of red wine. We absolutely enjoy watching like the Game of Thrones when that aired and reading our beloved Harry Potter. We shared and traveled many places together as a family or just as a couple's trip, where we loved to sit on the beach and people watch and make up stories about people that we would see in our own minds while they was there. If it was true or not, we don't know, but that's what it was to us. Eddie how he saw you is who you were. For instance, if you was fat, then you was Fat Albert. And that's how he had you in this context. Like, whatever how he saw you. and he was really quick-witted. And when he was in that moment, we would call him Fast Eddie. So he was more than his circumstances of a political prisoner or a martyr. He was kind, he was influential, encouraging. He was a great storyteller. As we shared the many moments together, we've also had a lot of inside jokes or stories, like I said, how people got their nicknames. One that I could recall very well was Nutty Buddy. And if you knew that, then you don't repeat it, because just know that's one for the books inside of it. He was, I don't know, he was just iconic in that way. He was just great and grand. He was such a good person that it brought all of us here together today. And as Dominique and I became friends, and I really don't know how that even came to be. I don't even remember, but I do know that we quickly became sisters. And I want to extend my love to you today and your family, and thank you for letting me be a part of it, me and my husband. And as I say, here's to good people. May we know them, May we be them, and may we continue to raise them. Thank you.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Next, we'll have a musical selection by Lorenzo Cooper.
How do I say goodbye to what we had? The good times that made us laugh outweigh the bad. I thought we'd had to see forever, but forever is gone, gone away. It's so hard to say goodbye to yesterday. I don't know where this road is going to lead me. All I know is where we've been and what we've been through. I thought we'd get to see tomorrow, but tomorrow is gone, gone away. It's so hard to say goodbye to yesterday. And I'll take with me this memory to be my sunshine after the rain. It's so hard to say goodbye to yesterday. And I'll take with me the memories to be my sunshine after the rain. It's so hard to say goodbye to yesterday.
All right now, let that settle in now. Yes. Remarks from William Gregory Freeman III, who sang.
I want to say first, thank you, Ms. Dominique, for considering this. And I want to thank the family, the immediate family of Mr. Eddie, for sharing him with the rest of us who didn't have the best of father figures. And I say thank you from the bottom of my heart. I want to start my talk with this quote that was on one of my slides from here, right here at Johns Hopkins. And it is by Leela Watson. It says, "If you have come here to help me, you are wasting our time. But if you have come here because your liberation is bound up with mine, then let us work together." And the reason I use that for my talk is because when I met Mr. Conway, I was at the crossroads as a young person in prison serving a life plus 20-year sentence. And that crossroads was in both in growing up in prison, forming an identity that was already fractured in a lot of identities, hid behind masks, and then putting religion on top of it. So I was on the table with Mr. Eddie, and this was after like a scuffle had taken place, and he saw the folks who had leadership value. And in a very quiet and subtle way, he summons us to leadership in a way that would build community. If all that sounds like confusion, then I know you're listening much like he was. Mr. Eddie listened with eyes as much as he did his ears, so his wisdom saw people like me coming a mile away. The outcast whose very blood fuels the prison industrial complex. I had accepted religion to deconstruct the twisted pathology on my own of self-hate. And we all know a problem cannot be solved at the same level it was created. At least that's what I thought I was doing anyway. Because in that mind, I thought if anybody could help me, surely it would be God. What I came up with in that process was a deeper hatred for black self-discovery. I avoided books that told stories of Arabs stealing Africans in their quest to dominate the world. My tolerance, love, and connection to the black struggle and its people lay dormant behind the idea of Muslim versus non-Muslim, which Mr. Eddie helped me see was just another line drawn in the sand between the black community to which the paradigms of systemic oppression had already bound me. And again, if I told you that this was a twisted pathology, you should have had it as a thought. He influenced the way I grew to even know God. I remember in one of several encounters with Mr. Eddie, and I say encounters because every time we connected on a personal level, in the housing unit, in the yard, at friend of a friend, he agitated my vision of the world as it was set up against the fratricidal tendencies that I thought made me a man. His agitation was concise and comprehensive speech, followed by active listening that usually concluded with something of this face and a statement. All right then, you go ahead and do that and let's see what you come up with. He knew the work belonged to me in as much as I belonged to the black community. No matter the dogma that I adopted, I would never escape the consequences of being black. His mannerisms were that of a family member, you know, the type of family member you never met, but heard so much about you almost thought he wasn't real, sort of like Uncle Tom and Harriet Beecher Stowe's Uncle Tom's Cabin. Not perfect in as much as he was intentional, sacrificial, and an inspiration almost without effort. These are the ways that Mr. Eddie influenced me to think beyond God in my community. You see, he would say, "I'm not asking you to lose your God," and this is a direct quote. I have a composition book I brought home after serving 21 years of confinement, and in there, this man, he said this to me. And I wrestled with it, and I'm gonna give it to you in a few seconds, but I wrestled with it for years, right? And Ms. Dominic, no, I wrestled with it for years. I was super Muslim, right? I'm still Muslim, but I'm saying at that time my pathology was twisted. He said, "I'm not asking you to lose your God. I'm asking you to consider how your understanding how your understanding of that God is causing you to lose your rightful place in this black community. Now, I ask us all here today and watching from home to consider the impact of his influence wherever he might be, but only after you take these words, not of mine, of his, to your heart. Let me know what you come up with. I want to say, Mr. Eddie, my dear mentor, comrade, and accountability partner, your influence will continue to shift the mindsets you have touched because your influence never sought to control our minds. Through knowledge that was fiercely interrogated, wisdom birthed through life lived experience, and compassion that lives to forgive all forever. You will live in us for all of our time and to those we touch. Again, and only after this will I end. Let me say all of this to you to end on his words and have you consider them. Ponder everything you hear today, and then the repast and beyond, let me know what you come up with.
Please come forward, Darna Noor.
I want to first say thank you to Dominique, to Eddie's entire family, to his family and to his family. I can't even express how much of an honor it is to be here with you today. And his spirit is really large in the room with us right now. I think we can all agree. And I want to just start by sharing something that Eddie said in the incredible book that Susie Day put together with interviews between him and his brother Paul Coates, The Brother You Choose. He said, ideologically, I'm a revolutionary socialist, and I've always had faith that if people understand enough, and if they work together, it might take hundreds of years, but they will eventually develop the kind of society that would be healthy and good for everybody. And I think I'm not alone in this. When I met Eddie nearly 10 years ago, I was sort of, really imbued with this most pessimistic form of analysis, this really fatalistic kind of analysis. I think I thought then that really understanding the evils of economic injustice, of capitalism, of white supremacy, really internalizing them, meant knowing that they were immutable. And I don't think I'm alone in this. I think, a lot of people around me did too. But then I met Eddie. Here was this person whose name was in Dead Prez lyrics and on the tongues of elders I'd meet around Baltimore and in the newspaper, who had just been in prison for 44 years under just the most impossibly, horrifically unjust circumstances. I know we all know this here, but I just can't emphasize how much it still fills all of us with rage. Eddie had been through more injustice than anyone I'd ever met in my life, and yet he always somehow maintained that we could not give up on the possibility of a just world. He believed that it was worth fighting for, and not just worth fighting for, but that it was our responsibility to do so. People are my spirituality, he would say. And that was the message that I would hear from Eddie over the years at the Quaker meetings that he would bring me to, at community gardens or community farms, as he would call them, at Connections, and then at Tubman House, in parking lots, at the Real News studio, in his living room. He never stopped reminding any of us, right, that we need to maintain that faith. But Eddie also taught me that hope is not a feeling. Hope is a practice. It's a discipline, right? If you're mad, you should talk about what's making you mad. You should try to read about it, try to understand it. You should talk to and interview the best thinkers of your time about it. But you should also try to provide others with the tools that you can to fix it and do whatever you can. You can't just think about the world, right? The point is not to understand it. The point is to fix it, he would say. The point is to change it. And of course, none of us can fix everything individually. It's not all power to the person, right? It's all power to the people. Even Eddie couldn't fix everything, and that was never somehow a reason not to try. Eddie looked into the face of injustice so directly and still struggled relentlessly to expand the rights of people inside jail, outside of it, and he didn't stop just because he couldn't provide a backpack for every single kid in the world through a backpack giveaway, right? So even in our grief, who would we be to stop now? Knowing Eddie and being a part of this community has been one of the great honors of my entire life. And in his honor, let's just keep fighting as though that better world is possible, because I know that he knows that it is.
the reading of Invictus by Naima Major.
I want to thank you, Dominique Conway, for allowing me to help celebrate this wonderful life. Eddie was a good friend to me. He made me laugh. He listened. He could get me to do things like stand up here and read this poem. I don't read poetry, but I'm going to do my best. Thank you so much, Eddie, for all that you gave. This is an unusual poem, Invictus. My grandmother liked this poem. A lot of you probably know this poem. Nelson Mandela loved this poem. Dominique reminded me that Assata Shakur used this poem in the preface to Assata Speaks. So I think it's a wonderful poem, and I think it speaks to struggle. And Eddie knew a lot about struggle, but he also knew so much more about victory. Thank you so much. Out of the night that covers me, black as the pit from pole to pole, I think whatever gods may be, I thank whatever gods may be for my unconquerable soul. In the fell clutch of circumstance, I have not winced nor cried aloud. Under the bludgeonings of chance, my head is bloody but unbound. Beyond the place of wrath and tears looms but the horror of the shade, and yet the menace of the years finds and shall find me unafraid. It matters not how straight the gate, how charged with punishment the scroll. I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul. Power to the people.
Zach Murray.
I first just wanted to thank everybody for the love and power that's in this room. This is just what I know I needed and my family needed in this moment. And I'm incredibly grateful to have the honor to just give a few remarks about my experience with Eddie. It's a real privilege, honor to extend some gratitude to this brother, to this African king that was real and tangible in all of our lives. I first got to hear the voice of Eddie when I was 12 years old through the phone. And one of the things that always stuck out to me about Eddie was that he could see your light without ever seeing you. And he helped you to know what your purpose was. And someone who has that kind of power is something I'll never be able to forget, or a person I'll never be able to forget about. Eddie shared a lot of messages with me that are still ringing in my ear right now, and they've been ringing in my ear ever since I got the news about him passing away. And I hope that those messages stay with me for a long time. I'm really thankful for so much that he did. One of the cool things about being connected to Eddie and my mom's organizing was all the amazing young people, or they were young at the time, who I got to meet, who became mentors and heroes in my life. I'm thinking about Lorenzo, I'm thinking about Erica, Bashi, Jean-Jacques, who were young people who were budding warriors who came along and stood up and did what they wanted to do to ensure that this brother was free. And the magic and the miracle that I got to experience, that I could admit I felt I was never going to experience, was being able to see Eddie on the outside. Eddie brought me and one of my good friends, Nick Brady, into the prison to teach public speaking and debate. And one of the most amazing things, as much as Nick and I won in the debates that we faced, the toughest battles and the toughest places for us to win were with the brothers that Eddie was organizing on the inside. And I think we were undefeated on the outside, but very much defeated in the debates on the inside. And so I'm thankful for those brothers as well, who I learned a lot from in terms of how to struggle and who to struggle with, and about leadership, and about not giving up despite all of the stuff that this country has thrown at them. And that sticks with me as well. I had a couple of quotes that I just wanted to share really quickly that made me think of Eddie. The first is from John Henrik Clarke in A Great and Mighty Walk. He says, "In order to have a charismatic leader, you have to have a charismatic program. Because if you have a charismatic program, then if you can read, you can lead. When the leader gets killed while you're reading from page 13 of your charismatic program, you can bury the man with honors, then continue the plan by reading from page 14. Let's keep on." Eddie wasn't just charismatic. I miss his voice so much right now, but he was also a program. I had the privilege of visiting him back in November, and I knew it was him even though he was sleeping because the bed was surrounded by desserts, cakes, and apple pies, and all the things that Eddie loved. But then immediately, as soon as he woke, before we did anything else, we got right to business, and he asked me about what I was experiencing with the community association in my neighborhood. And what Eddie imparted into me, his last words were to work with the young people in my neighborhood, to get them inspired and motivated to do something different and to see their light. And that'll stick with me as work that's really important to do when I get back home. I'm going to miss this brother so much, and I know all of you will too, but as so many folks have said here today, his spirit lives on inside of us, and it's the fight that will allow the struggle to continue. So I want to quote in closing from one of my favorite singers. I can't sing, unfortunately, so I won't do that to you all. But it's Stephen Thundercat Bruner in his song Praise the Lord. He says, "I know I'll see you again in another life. Thank you for sharing your love and your light. Though we say goodbye, we will say hello again. You'll always live in our hearts and our minds. Thank you for being a friend that you were to me. I cherish the moments of all our good time. Though you've traveled beyond, your legacy lives on. Go forward as the eagle to your endless majesty. I know I'll see you again in another life. Thank you for sharing your light with the world. Travel beyond, your legacy lives on. Now enter the void forever." Thank you.
We'll have a musical selection, Lafayette Gilchrist.
Just want to say thank you to Dominique, to Amber, for considering me, and say thank you to Paul, and say mostly thank you to Eddie. I met Eddie, more than 20 years ago. I played for Eddie when he was incarcerated. I played for Eddie when he was released. And when I heard Eddie passed, I called Paul and said, whatever you need me to do. It's been an honor, a true honor to know Eddie. And it's been a true honor to play music for Eddie. I'm going to play a short medley for you. This is dedicated to Eddie.
Ooh, that got all down inside of you, right? Remarks by Erica Woodland.
Greetings, family, comrades. It is truly a gift to be here today and to speak before you at Eddie's celebration of life. I'm so grateful to have been able to spend part of the past year sitting at Eddie's feet, listening and taking in all of his wisdom. I had the honor to know Eddie for almost 20 years. He is my comrade, my teacher, my mentor, and my family. Like many of us, Eddie has had an indispensable impact on my life and my work. As a young organizer in the early 2000s, I was doing work around abolition and anti-war work, and I met Eddie because of Dominique, his ride or die. And both of them have invested in my political and spiritual development. I have and will continue to learn so much from Eddie about humanity, the world, and our sacred responsibility to leave this planet better than we found it. Today, I want to focus on Eddie's greatest teaching for me, which is about love. Eddie embodied a love as tenacious and life-giving, and this manifested in his deep, unending love for Black people and all oppressed peoples. His love is unwavering and steadfast, as evidenced by his loyalty to our people and his refusal to allow state violence to disappear us. Eddie embodied a love that is flexible and adaptive. He had a rigorous practice of ongoing political development. He taught me that as a revolutionary, you must be willing to admit you are wrong, change your thinking, and do better when you know better. He taught me that we won't be free if we leave folks behind due to outdated ideologies that don't consider how vast the universe is and how it's always shifting around us. Eddie showed me through his actions that love is not a trivial thing, but it requires work, dedication, and sacrifice. A love that asks us to think beyond ourselves and beyond the people living at this time. A love so vast that it requires us to do the work of liberation for our ancestors, our descendants, and to the earth which holds us. a love that seeks to transmute violence in all its forms. Eddie's love is protective, generous, and compassionate. I will miss getting a phone call every year on my birthday. I will miss our political debates that, in my opinion, I always won. I will even miss us discussing and arguing about our dogs and our very different training methods. Eddie's included just giving Diego and Chunky whatever they wanted. I am lucky to have witnessed the most beautiful expression of this love in his relationship with Dominique, his political and spiritual partner. Through their partnership, I have learned about a love that has longevity, laughter, and the power to inspire liberation interpersonally and collectively. But it is Eddie's love for himself and his fierce commitment to his dignity and self-respect that has been my deepest teacher. He never allowed the systems and structures of violence that he survived to break his spirit or his generous heart. This is the work of a true revolutionary. Eddie, we'll miss you. You've given us so much and left a legacy that will continue to see liberation for generations. May you rest easy and in power in the land of the ancestors, and I know you are going to be cutting it up with Harriet Tubman and all the rest. I got a chance to interview Eddie for a project I'm working on, and I wanted to share the title of that chapter because the interview was really thinking about the work of the Black Panther Party and their work around collective care, safety, and liberation, and really thinking about the long-term impacts of trauma and violence. And I learned so much being able to listen to him and share his words. So, from Eddie, don't give up and don't make the same mistakes.
Next, we have our illustrious, our great elder, Baba Danny Glover. Danny Glover.
First, wow. I think we should give applause for everything, everyone. I think we should. You know, when I heard about Eddie's illness, and when I thought I had lost an opportunity to know him more, because I've always felt the sense that I wanted to know more about Eddie, the things that we know, certainly the things we know. But sometimes it's things that happen, and particularly the fact that we both were born the same year intrigues me. We were both born in 1946. He's only about 3 months older than I am. And I've wanted somebody to think about, to know, or to speak with someone about when did you feel the first impulses of what you were, or what you feel you can be. I've known Emory Douglas before the Black Panther Party, because we come from San Francisco, and he worked with the Sun Reporter there. But the whole idea of what are the things that shape us? What moments that crystallize in our lives where the direction we want to be? As I listen to young people, those young people who came here, they've been on a path. And that path has, in some ways, has included Eddie, so compound, so much in their lives. Was it for me And Eddie, maybe when we watched at 9 years old, the Montgomery bus boycott, and we wanted to be like those children, or we wanted to be like those adults. Or was it maybe when we watched Freedom Summer, or saw Freedom Summer, or saw the work that young people were doing in the South, who were our age at that time, and younger and older. So the point of being who we are comes from those elements, and the way in which you ascend, the way in which you continue to feel that you have an opportunity to say something and impact life. I thought at one point in time I wanted to be a teacher because I had this gift for math. I was a poor reader, but I had this gift for math, and I found myself relevant to those children with math. But to be here, and at the point in life to be thinking about Eddie from the standpoint of what I did, and we run so much we don't get enough time to sit down and be together and to share the love that was shared here today for Eddie, but not only for him, but for ourselves and the collective love that in this family, larger family, I'm not just talking about Dominique and his children, but the larger family of what do we expect? What are the things we expect? Historically, we can say that this generation that I came up in was expected. There were certain expectations of that generation. We were born right after World War II, and there were certain promises that were made. And for black people, certainly the just horrible symbols of racism through a bus boycott, the bus boycott. And it had to be dealt with in a way, in some way. Here, the United States had promoted itself as the symbol of the free world. And at the same time, the atrocities that was happening, not only in the South, but what happened. And those things began to shape you in ways, you know. What are those elements that shape young people today? The past that they're most, the future, the past that is most recognizable to them, and how that past connects to the history that they know, and possibly gives them some signs of what kind of future possibilities we have in this relationship. Those are the kind of things that I think in that. I wish I had those kind of conversations with Eddie, because we went the same track. Emory and I the same track. And what is the conversation that is? We all went after something much deeper when we talked about different systems of governments and different systems of relationships, whether it be socialism or whatever that is. We went to try to think ideologically what that looked like. How did it feel artistically? How did it feel in the relationships that we would shape in our lives and lay the foundation for the relationships that would be shaped and come about in those other those who come after us. And the question about that is, where do we go from now? What are the things that we go? What are the things we need now at this particular point in time? And Brother Eddie was always thinking about that as he talked to young people, because it's going to be their task, along with us, but their task to be that. And it has to be some sort of what I call radical equation for it to happen. It is going to have to be something that's going to be much larger than us as human beings, but something that also talks about what happens to the rest of the planet we live in. Because we don't know that. It is going to have to be not singular, but in some sort of way plural in different ways and accessible in different ways. And I think those are the conversations that we have the opportunity to bring to us. This, as I sat here trying to figure out what to say, what to talk about over the last few days, but always thinking about what our contribution can be within the framework with the tools that we have, and how through, whether we call it love, or how through our current situation, that when action has to take action, whatever it has to do that. But these are the kind of things that I think that this moment provides the opportunity for us to think about that, and to think about Eddie in terms of that. Imagine, it's almost unimaginable. You can say 44 years incarcerated, and to come out in that sense, to feel enlightened and feel determined in that sense is remarkable. But more than just that, but the fact that it has to be this transformation, how we talk about that with our artistic, but not only in our artistic ways, but also in the ways of transforming the world we live in. If that was, in some sense, there is some ways, and thank you very much. Thank you. All right then. There you go.
Wisdom from our elder. Wisdom from our elder. Thank you, God. The tribute, Ta-Nehisi, I'm sorry. Yes, the tribute, Ta-Nehisi Coates.
My sister back there, my literal sister, told me to make sure I speak into the mic, and I always had this problem where I end up going like this, so I'm gonna try to get this right here. Can y'all hear me? Yeah. Okay, good. It's funny because actually where Baba Danny was addressing himself, this issue of when the light turns on for you, when you become conscious, or I guess woke, as they say today, or maybe we don't say woke anymore, it's been taken by other people. That's always a question for me. And when I think about my own consciousness, Brother Eddie's at the core of that. And so in tribute, I offer just some words of my own on how I became conscious, but also some words from Brother Eddie himself. I don't think there's much I could say that would be more of a tribute than what he offered. Eddie Conway, a tribute. I was no older than 4 when my father, William Paul Coates, took me into the Baltimore Penitentiary. I can't say I remember much. I remember a lot of cops. I remember the clanging gates. I remember a wooden divider. And I remember across that divider, facing my father, a handsome, brown-skinned man about my father's age, Marshal Eddie Conway. I once asked my dad what would compel him to take a child that young into a prison. He told me he wanted me to see the fortress of our great adversary, to see the stronghold of our enslavers, to understand why I was here, to understand what I and all of us have been called to fight against. In that fight, Eddie, Brother Eddie as I called him, was our champion, our shining black prince, as I.C. Davis once said of Malcolm. This is not about Brother Eddie's perfection. This is about his great sacrifice. And his great sacrifice lay not in the 44 years he did, but how he did them. Brother Eddie was unjustly jailed. That is what the adversary did to him. But what Brother Eddie did, organizing the prisoners' labor union, educating his fellow prisoners, educating himself, authoring 2 books, that is what makes his sacrifice great. Brother Eddie inspired me before I understood the word. Because of him, my earliest and clearest memory is of black men in prison, and of this one heroic black man in particular. Great sacrifices are rarely born by individuals. So as I acknowledge Brother Eddie for what he gave to me, I want to also acknowledge what his family gave to us all. I'd like to acknowledge Brother Eddie's wife, Dominique Conway, his sons, Ronald Conway, Deshaun Massey, Zachary Murray, and Malik Stevenson, his daughters Amber Jones and Morgan Stevenson, his daughter-in-law Monica Conway, his grandchildren Jabari Conway, Janelle Conway, Danielle Massey, Dawn Massey, and Deshaun Massey Jr. I want to acknowledge his sisters, Veronica Booth, Myra Smith, Peggy Young, and Marilyn Graham, and his godsons, Cameron Granadino and Wahid Shakur. I really hope I got all those names right, y'all. My apologies if I didn't. There have been a great number of people today who honored Brother Eddie as the hero he was. But I think it's worth taking a moment to get beyond Brother Eddie, the inspiration, to Eddie, the man. And to do that, I turn not to my own words, but to his. What follows is a lightly edited narrative taken from Brother Eddie's contribution to the book, The Brother You Choose by Susie Day. I'd like to thank Susie for doing the work of recording and transcribing Brother Eddie's words. Thank you, Susie. Susie informed me that there are, in fact, reels and reels of tape that actually did not make it into the book, and I hope we're just doing what we can to make sure that's preserved and safeguarded. It's really important. It's Eddie Conway. Some years ago, when I was still in prison, I'd been trying to write a book. I decided, damn, I could die here, and all my life is going to be lost. So I wrote everything down, I sent my writings to Paul, and a month later I asked him about it. He said, "Brother, I tried to read it 5 times and it put me to sleep." It was that bad. I sent it to another friend and supporter, Tom Collada, a white community organizer at the community center, and he fell asleep on it. I sent it to about 5 people, and it put everybody to sleep. So I put that book away. A while later, I thought, maybe I can tackle that first book again. So I pulled it out, and I went to sleep. It's really his words. I like to think I've had an eventful life. Germany, Jessup, the Panthers, my wife, my kids. I won't go through it all. But what I've got here is just part of my story. Hopefully it won't put you to sleep. In the fall of 1964, me and my wife at the time, Kay Rogers, were expecting our first child. 3 days after he was born, my son Ronald, I went down to Fort Holabird with my brother-in-law Boot and 2 other buddies, and I enlisted. They shipped me to Germany. They shipped Boot to Vietnam. He never came back. I got a letter from Kay. Boot was ambushed in a rice paddy. I was so hurt. I felt responsible. And I was over in Germany safe. I thought, okay, I got to get to Vietnam. I got to avenge Boots' death. I was raised in a 3-generation household in Cherry Hill. Later, we brought my great-grandmother up from Virginia. Then we had 4 generations. My mom and my grandmom were domestics. My dad had been in the Navy during the Second World War. Then he worked for the city. My grandfather was a stevedore. He would go down to the Maryland dock and unload the ships, so he might come home with a load of bananas or a sack with a huge turtle jumping around inside. My grandmother could cook, so the house would always be smelling nice. My dad was one of those Harley Davidson guys with the leather jacket and the bandanas. He'd ride his motorcycle, him and his little mob. He put me on the motorcycle and zoom off. It terrified me, but my sister Cookie would just laugh. I remember a lot of running space, grass. I was young. I was happy. When I was about 16, I got this impression that I was grown. I was working at a car wash. I was bringing in a paycheck every week, and I thought, now I can buy stuff. So I told my mom, I'm doing okay with this job. At the end of the summer, I'm not going back to school. Of course, Mom did what moms do. You can only live here if you're not going to school. I'm like, no problem, I got money. I didn't realize I had money because I wasn't paying rent, electricity, food, water, clothes. I got with a buddy of mine, Howard Reed, and we talked each other into moving into a house together. Let's get a place then. One of our older friends signed for it. People were coming over and they'd party, stay up till 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. Me and Howard would hang out being slick guys together. The big hats, long leather coats, the pointy shoes. I had a few incidents. I stepped back and said to myself, I don't want to bring a child into this world where I'm running wild. So I enlisted. There were some racist things happening against us in the Army. I started seeing that over in Germany. I was in a platoon of 25 people, and 22 of them were white. There was a black PFC Goodman and 1 black sergeant. Goodman was a division boxing champ, so he was my best friend. But most of the sergeants were from the South. They were old and racist. They tried to cover it up, but it always come out. By then, I had started looking historically. I read about Columbus and the conquistadors and what happened to the Native Americans. I studied, and I used the knowledge to beat the white guys in the head. They swore to God that Columbus had discovered America or that there were only 5 continents, stuff that was absolutely ridiculous. But they said it with such authority. I would correct them. Then I would show them a book where they were wrong. One day it hit me. I'm digging ditches. I'm peeling potatoes. I'm washing toilets. I'm doing all this stuff in a platoon with a bunch of idiots. Eventually, I hooked up with a bunch of young Africans. I don't even know where these brothers was from. They was just so angry with Americans, with white people. But they were also mad with us, black servicemen. They would cross the street rather than walk beside us. They said we sided with the white man. I didn't understand. And then this one time, I was in Copenhagen taking my date to a play called Patrick X. At the theater, they got little books out saying this is based on a true story. So this Patrick X character gets assassinated at the end. And I'm like, huh? A black man assassinated in America? Yeah, we get killed, lynched, shot, but assassinated? Why? That was how I learned about Malcolm X. I started looking at Malcolm's writings, and I thought, wow, there's some serious stuff here. But I was still mad about Boots' death. I still thought America was okay. I was filling out the papers ready to go to Vietnam. And then one morning, I'm sitting there with my uniform all laid out, reading the Army paper, Stars and Stripes, and on the front page is a photo of a black woman on a street corner in Newark. And in the center of the street, there's an Army personnel carrier. This was a picture of the so-called Newark riot. I saw one of those box tanks with treads, right? On top of that thing is a .50 caliber machine gun and a belt of bullets, the kind we used to wear around our neck, but it was pointed at these black women. I was a medic. I knew the damage that those 50 caliber bullets could do, and I knew that if you pressed that button, it would go off 25 to 50 times before you could stop it. I looked at that weapon. I looked at the woman. This little white soldier is sitting up in that tank, and he's pointing at these black women. I looked over to my uniform, all starched and pressed. The boots are shining, and I'm ready to put this stuff on and go out. And I thought, something is wrong here. The Army, my Army, is pointing machine guns at black women. One of them could be my mom. And right there, looking at that picture, I woke up. Thank y'all.
Is there something else you want to say, Amber, before we close? More directions.
I'm not going to say much. Just thank you all for being here today and everybody's well wishes and all the comfort y'all have extended my mom and our family. It's been really, really kind. And it's really helped with what was a really difficult time for us. So thank you. I want to ask if the pallbearers can come forward and the funeral director. They're going to go ahead and do the processional and remove the casket. After that, we're going to head over to the repast. But if everyone can remain seated until the casket has been removed and the family, that would be really helpful. Thank you.
And may we all say, Ashe, 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 Ashe.